Okay, so there's and I'm sure you guys over here can't see it, but we've got a poster up on the front board here, which has got the outcomes. You know, what is it at the end of this that you will be able to do or should have exposure to? And so that's what Gina and I are going to go off of. So the first piece is explore general information sources to increase familiarity with the topic. So the part that I'm going to talk about, I just want to show a couple tools. Some of you may be familiar with these tools already if you have come down for a training with another class. But there are a couple tools on the library's page that can be helpful, and I think that Gina also has a couple websites that she'll show her a website.
Yeah.
So on the library's page, if you go to greatbay.edu/library, brings you into our page, or on the college's page, right on the front of it, there's a link at the top that says Student Services. If you hover on that, you'll see a link to the library there. But in any event, if you come into the library, one of the first things that I would recommend is if you go to ebooks, the very first link is to something called Credo Reference. These are reference materials, dictionaries, handbooks, encyclopedias. They're basic foundation information, and it's great for a couple things. First of all, it's great to kind of help explore your topic. And I'm going to show you a specific tool that will help with that appeals to different styles of learners. But also, as you hone in on what your topic is, this is a great place to get foundation information on your topic so that in the opening paragraph of your paper, usually what you do is you define your topic for your reader, and this is a great place to go and get definitions. So Credo Reference is sort of the scholarly version of Wikipedia, but you actually can cite from it. So a couple things. First of all, there are broad subjects listed, so that's a way that you could approach it. You could just say, well, I think, especially if you're in an English class where the sky's the limit, you can pick any topic, this could be a way to approach it. Or if you have a specific topic in mind, you can go ahead and go to your search box and type in what you think you might be interested in. But the tool that I want to show you in Credo is this mind map. So if I go into Credo, as you can see, basic search is defaulted right now because that's in black text. However, if I click on mind map, that now becomes black, so that's what it's going to search. And so I can type in what I'm looking for. So I'm just curious, are any of you at the point in the semester in any of your classes where you've had to pick topics? A couple people want to kind of just say out loud what your topics are?
Associate degree versus bachelor degree.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because I helped her the other day.
Oh, okay. But it is interesting.
Any other topics?
I'm doing archery. I'm doing a compare and contrast essay on 2 different types of bows.
Archery and bows. Interesting. Okay. All right, let's go with archery. All right, so I'm going to type in the term archery. And what mind map does is it presents the information to you visually. Now, this might not necessarily be helpful for you where you're writing a compare and contrast essay, but if you were doing a research essay about, well, what is archery and how did it come to be and what's the history of it and, sort of where is it still in use, and this might be helpful because what it does is it gives you the term that you've plugged in, and then it gives you sort of related words or phrases around that term. And so I've talked to a lot of students that like using this as a beginning tool to just start to conceptualize their topic. They like the way that the information is presented. So once you're in this, if you hover over anything, it will start to give you one of the many entries on the topic. And then the other thing that's nice is if you click on something else in this, it will reorient your map. So it's now going to give me some other information. And, I'm going to click here where it says bow and arrow.
This is awesome.
And so now what this does is, now I still have archery listed here, but now I've got the focus being bow and arrow, and then I've got things off of that. So I've got something about firearms, sun, horse, shooting. So again, I mean, this is a pretty simplistic kind of a topic to use this as a tool, but it just demonstrates that it's a tool to use as you're starting to get some more information on your topic. You're trying to get some other words or phrases. The other tool that I'd like to show you, if I'm gonna go back to the library's webpage, and under other online resources, there's something here. The very first one is called Points of View, and this is another tool that can just be helpful as you're starting. If you want to grab a chair from outside and bring it in, you're certainly welcome to. You can come on in that door. Okay, so the way that I got here, again, I was at the library's webpage. I went to other online resources that you can either use the menu here on the left, or you can use this block of information here. And then other online resources, under that, I go to Points of View. Okay, and then if I scroll down under Points of View, it lists lots of different categories of information. Now, the focus of this product tends to be current event and or controversial topics. So again, you know, if you're in a history class, this might not be a relevant place to go, but if you're in an English class and you're just told you can pick any topic under the sun and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by that, then this would be a way where you could go in, you can kind of look at very broad categories, and then you can see that, you know, if I look under animal welfare, I can expand that and take a look at some other things that are in there. Okay? So these are just two tools that are in the library that can help you start to kind of look at more information on your topic. I'm going to turn it over.
Okay, sure. And to go along with, how many people are still in need of topics? Okay, so a few. Okay, and how many people have topics and they're kind of ready to delve into research? Okay, all right. So one other website that I like, and this is just something I've kind of found, it's Midway College. And I mean, it's just one example of many different research topics, just for those of you who are kind of thinking, I could write about maybe whatever I want and what am I interested in, and you know, thinking about, you spend a lot of time on this research essay, particularly in the English classes, pretty much the whole semester. So you really want to be interested. Oh, this is taking a minute to come up, but that's okay. You really, really want to be interested in this topic because you're going to essentially become an expert on this topic, and you don't want to pick something that you're not going to be excited to read about and research about. And as far as reading and research goes, you're going to spend a lot of time sifting through sources, and I'm sure Becky can attest to this too. Sometimes there are sources that you might say, oh, this isn't going to help me after all, once you're kind of establishing where you want to go within a particular topic. So the most time-consuming part of the research essay, I would say, is the research itself and the reading, and you know, how many of these sources are you actually going to end up using in your paper. Yeah?
How did you get to the research paper topic?
Oh, it was just Midway College. You literally, if you Google 100 research essay topics, Midway College,
okay.
It's the first one that comes up.
Okay.
So anyway, this is just one I've stumbled upon over the past couple of years that I like, particularly because they're all different kinds of topics that, and then they have some questions underneath the topics. And thinking about, you know, once you find a topic, and you do some preliminary reading on your topic, which we'll be talking about, and kind of gathering of just general information on your topic, you're going to want to be developing some research questions. You know, why is this topic worth exploring? and what about it do I want to prove throughout my essay? How many of you are familiar, I mean, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things, so we will be getting more in detail about a thesis statement as time goes on, but how many of you are familiar with the thesis statement? Okay, and we'll be talking more about it, that's good. But essentially the thesis statement is an answer to a question, right? It's a statement. So how do we get to this answer? We come up with several different questions related to our topic. So this is one reason I particularly like this website. So for instance, advertising, that second topic. Should certain kinds of ads be banned in the interest of health / morality / annoyance? Alcohol ads, cigarette ads, prescription medication ads. So it just kind of gets some ideas sparking for you as far as what questions do I want to ask about this topic? And this is going to take some exploring. Another thing, you know, that's useful when you're coming up with a topic, or maybe you've narrowed it down to, say, 4 topics that you're interested in, is trying to brainstorm and come up with a list of questions for each topic, or a handful of questions even for each topic. What might be worth exploring in relation to this topic? Sometimes it's handy to have a partner, or I know some of the English teachers do this, and maybe in some of the other subjects as well. They have you kind of pair up or get into groups and have people exchange their topics and have the partners say, oh, here are 5 questions I would have about this topic of advertising, or this topic of what's happening in Africa, you know, to look at our list in front of us, or airplane accidents, and then kind of working with classmates to get some ideas sparking. And that's something that can be done at the Writing Center, or I'm sure with Becky too, you know. These are some questions we might have. So, does anyone have any questions so far about any of this? Okay. So that's a good thing to think about, is coming up with questions. And then as far as the type of questions we want to come up with, I might go a little old school and use the board here. So, it'll be lit up maybe for a minute. I just want to show you a couple of different types of questions. Or should I turn the projector off, or no? Maybe I'll just say them. Yeah, maybe I'll just say them. And if you find that these are helpful, hopefully you will. Okay, so the key to thinking about research questions, right? Choosing a narrow question. You want there to be a focus within your essay. So something that would be a really broad question would be, what are the hazards of fad diets? Okay, we could probably write a couple books on what are the hazards of fad diets, depending on the type of diet and that sort of thing. Something narrower, what are the hazards of low carbohydrate diets in particular? See the difference there? It gives you a little focus, because, you know, 10 pages or so might seem like a lot at the beginning, but once you're really finding your research and you're getting into the groove of the research essay, you're going to find that if you're really interested in this topic and you can find information on it, there's going to be a lot to say. Also choosing a challenging question. You don't want your question to be something that someone could Google and answer in 10 minutes, you know, by Googling. You want something worth exploring, that you're kind of taking different avenues to present different sides of this question to your reader, or different sides of an answer, and choosing a grounded question. So something like really speculative and ungrounded would be, is it wrong to share music files on the internet? And something more grounded would be, because that's so opinionated, right? And you're looking for fact-based research evidence through scholarly sources for a research essay. So something more grounded might be, how has internet file sharing affected the earning potential of musicians? Something specific, you can find some credible scholarly sources. Anything to add?
I guess what I would just jump in, and I think that you kind of touched on that, is that it also is going to depend on what kind of essay you're writing.
Absolutely.
And a lot of sort of our thought process as we put this together was really focused on the research essay. But we've already heard about a compare and contrast essay. You know, there are a persuasive essay. So there are different types of essays that you will be asked to write, especially for English papers. If you're in a history paper, you've got a different kind of a paper. If you're in a psych paper, if you're writing a psych paper, if you're in a psych course, then that's very factual. It's not at all your opinion. So it really is also going to depend on what discipline are you coming from and what assignment are you answering, and also what is the instructor looking for. So just, you know, if you come down and work with us in the library, there are 2 librarians that can help you with your research. I'm always going to start off by saying, what is your assignment? What course are you in? Who's your instructor? Do you have a copy of your assignment? And so we'll kind of go from there to try to figure out, well, what are the parameters of what you're looking for? Because it could be that you actually do need to get some of the opinionated sort of articles if you're writing a persuasive essay. Okay.
And in the Writing Center, it's the same way. The first question is always, what is the assignment? Do you have a handout on it? Do you have instructions in the syllabus? Richard, what were you going to say?
When you say that it's a scholarly work, does like that site always present scholarly works, or do we have to look for something to determine that we have a scholarly work or not?
That's a great question.
Great question.
And if you could just hold that for a couple minutes, we are going to talk about that.
Yeah.
We're almost there. We're almost there. I guess the only other thing that I would say, just to kind of emphasize what Gina had to say about focus, is that that's an area that I often see students coming down to us for help because they will be feeling overwhelmed at trying to find information on their topic, and often it's because they are picking something so broad. They'll come down and say, well, I'm writing a paper about, you know, ADD, or I'm writing about breast cancer, and that's huge. And so that's another area where the library staff can help you if you're kind of feeling like, how do I get a focus? If you're not finding a focus by kind of scanning through articles, then we're happy to kind of sit and brainstorm with you, and I would imagine that you might do that in the Writing Center.
Absolutely, same thing.
And so
Any of
it's
the
sort of-
tutors.
right, and it's like, well, okay, so you want to do ADD, what's your interest in that? Are you looking to find out, you know, well, what's the impact on a classroom? Do you want to know, how is it diagnosed? Do you want to know what's been the history of it? Do you want to know holistic treatment for it?
Right.
So, you know, there are different ways to approach topics, and that's something that if you're kind of stuck in, we can help you with. Conversely, sometimes I have students that come in and they have got such a specific topic that they want to research, and it would be very difficult for them to meet the requirements of the assignment, that they wouldn't be able to get that number of pages, or they wouldn't be able to get that many scholarly sources. So if somebody came up and said, I want to write my 10-page research paper on the Rochester Fair, that's a great topic, but you're going to find Foster's articles or Rochester Times articles. Those aren't scholarly. And so we can brainstorm to say, okay, well, do you want to take a look at, you know, well, what has been the history of county fairs in the country? Do you want to look at tourism? Do you want to look at, you know, how do communities come together? So, you know, we can kind of brainstorm to try to look at how do you still write about your topic, but let's take a step back and look at it through a bigger lens to be able to answer your assignment, okay? And sometimes you'll be able to do that on your own just by doing your searching. And so one of the things that I'm just going to point out, jumping back to the library's webpage, when you are in the library's page and you are in especially the article section, if you want to grab one of the, excuse me one second. If you're in EBSCO or ProQuest, in particular ProQuest, if you plug in a topic that you're looking for, and I'm going to stick with archery, what's nice about these tools is they will often give you some terms that they suggest could be related to your topic. So just by paying attention to that, it might lead you to some other words or phrases or a way to focus or a way to narrow in on what are the key concepts that you need to focus in on for that paper. Okay? So that's a tool that's built into, in particular, ProQuest, and also EBSCO will do it. Was there anything?
I had one thought just
Okay.
while you were talking about this idea, kind of to complement what Becky was saying, this idea of getting the focus on the topic. Because I come from the writing side of things, I'll say things to you, you know, if you come to the writing center, I'll say, well, for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, time yourself and do a free write, you know, without thinking or censoring language or spelling or any of that, just kind of anything. If you have a topic or a couple topics in mind, but especially if you're down to one topic, what do you want to know about this topic? What interests you about this topic? What is worth exploring about this topic? If it's a psych class and it's a very, very specific type of assignment, you know, what will my teacher want me to explore about this? But you just kind of clear the pathway for some of that, like, you're just making some space, I think, to really say, what direction do I want to go in? And you might find, you know, one word or sentence from that free write that, oh yeah, I want to go in this direction, you know, and for 10 minutes of your time. And it's similar to even the mind map, how it creates those clusters. You can do that on your own if you're a visual learner, you know, or if you're, it's a type of brainstorming, really, like, what topic do I think of when I have this central topic, and kind of branch off and do that on your own freehand, or a brainstorming list. However you learn, you can kind of gear that toward how you learn and what's going to benefit you.
I'm just curious, what connection do you have with Midway College? Is that
No connection.
just curious?
Just
They
random.
pay us heavily.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Just random.
Yeah, you know what? On the library's webpage, we link to, like, for instance, we link to OWL, which is the online writing lab for Purdue University. We have no affiliation with Purdue, but why reinvent the wheel if there are some colleges out there that have created sites that have got great information? It doesn't make sense for us to start from scratch, and so we just will link and share to that
Like
information.
UNH.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Purdue's a great one to be familiar with no matter what class you're in throughout your whole college career here, right?
Right,
So
right.
up to date.
I guess one other thing before we move off of this topic, when Gina and I were meeting throughout the summer to kind of talk about this workshop series and how did we want to go, I think one of the things that became obvious to me as we spoke, and also from our experience, is that there has to be a certain level of flexibility as you're approaching writing your paper. You know, that very beginning part, it's sort of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg, that sometimes I'll have students that they'll have an instructor that wants them to pick the topic and write the outline. Thank you. And that's an approach, but sometimes I find that really can frustrate students because you're starting to write your outline, but you don't necessarily know if that information is out there yet. And so just kind of giving yourself permission to be a little bit flexible, that sometimes when you go, you plug in a search term in ProQuest or EBSCO, and you're trying to find some basic articles to kind of find out, okay, is this information out there so that I can put this as one of the items in my outline? You might find that, no, that information isn't out there.
Right.
And certainly I have had students that have come in. I think the most extreme example that I had a student that wanted to write a research paper on the impact of a failed abortion on the fetus. There's not information out there about that. And so if that student had really stuck with that and said, no, I'm sticking to my guns, I mean, they might have been able to kind of creatively write a paragraph, but there's not research out there to support scholarly articles. So the student had to be flexible and kind of say, okay, well, I do want to focus on abortion. I'm going to talk about the history of it. I'm going to talk about the morality of it. She went in a different direction. So every now and then a student will come in and they'll have something in mind, but as we go to do research, nobody else has necessarily looked at the topic the way they're thinking of it, and there hasn't been research conducted on the topic. And so that's where you might need to be flexible. And so you might present an initial outline to your instructor, but then you go and start finding your sources and you see that it goes in a different direction, and so you might have to redo your outline. Have any of you had that experience where, yeah, I see a lot of you nodding your heads that's happened. So like I said, it's sort of hard, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you get the articles first and then do your paper, do your outline? Or do you do your outline first and then the questions or the topics that you've got in your outline drives how you find your information? And it's sort of an organic thing. I think they both sort of unfold.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any one right way. I think it really depends on the assignment, the topic, how you learn as an individual, and writing's really a messy process.
Right.
So to think that you're going to put it in this neat little box is probably unrealistic. It might cause disappointment.
Right.
But also to compliment what Becky was saying, I always say, and we'll talk more about thesis statements, but that's going to be like the main point of a whole entire essay, right? Whether it's a research essay or not. So I always say come up with a tentative thesis statement, because as you read and research and learn more about your topic, your thesis statement must change. Basically, if your thesis statement doesn't change even like slightly, then you're probably not learning anything. So it's sort of like you don't want to say, this is my thesis statement, I'm sticking to it throughout, because as you learn and discover all these different sources and gather material, that's absolutely going to change shape. So being flexible is really, really important.
So hopefully that's reassuring to some of you, because I do find I keep tissues on my desk for a reason. A lot of times students come in and that is the most stressful part to them. If they're given a specific assignment of you must pick your topic, you must give me the outline, and that can just be such a source of frustration. So just kind of knowing that from the beginning, that sometimes it actually, you almost are cheating where you're finding your articles first, even though that's not how the instructor has laid out the assignment. That might then drive your writing your outline. Okay.
And we will be going over, I think, next week, like how to write an outline. But to be honest with you, I don't find that, personally, I don't teach the pre-writing Roman numeral outline, because it's not, I guess it's sort of subjective. I don't think it's the best. I don't want to disagree with anyone's instructor, but I don't think there is a best way, I guess I should say. So we'll cover that, because a lot of you will have to do that. But there's also a reverse outline that we'll talk about kind of down the road that's more after you draft, that I'm a real big believer in. So, I mean, again, it's really individual. Some people love outlines, and when I was younger, I loved them, and something sort of changed along the way. So we see what happens and how we learn best and what works for us. But if you feel like you're so boxed in, and that's going to be like paralyzing or debilitating or stressful, then no, you don't have to do it. I mean, unless your instructor's saying, do your best, and we can help you with that.
Right.
Writing Center for sure.
So we're going to shift a little bit and talk about identifying the purpose and audience of potential resources, item number 4 on our list. So popular versus scholarly, current versus historical. I'm going to spend the majority of what I want to talk about talking about popular versus scholarly, because I find that that's where students sometimes have questions, and it's certainly where instructors are much more explicit about what they're looking for. So I'm going to spend most of my time talking about that. But in terms of, in general, figuring out the purpose and audience of different sources, and especially the current versus historical, is that a lot of that is driven, again, by what course are you in and what's your assignment. So, for instance, if I had a student that came in and said to me, I'm doing research on the Cold War, I'm in a history course, then I'm going to direct them to different sources in the library, versus if somebody came in and said, I'm doing an argumentative essay and I want to talk about relations between the United States and Russia right now and sort of this new Cold War that we're in. That's sort of an obvious example between, you're going to be looking at at historical articles about the Cold War versus some current information about the Cold War, what's currently going on. So sometimes you can be directed that way based on what course you're in. But in particular, scholarly versus general sources. How many of you guys are in a class or have been in a class where your instructor says to you, you have to have X number, fill in the number, of scholarly articles for your paper? So, yeah, a lot of you. Okay. Did all of you feel really comfortable about, well, how do you make that determination and what is the difference and why do they say scholarly? So would it be helpful if I talk for a second about what makes something scholarly versus general? Okay. You guys are so great that you're playing into where I'm going with this.
And I do see a lot of people struggle with
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely.
So I have my little props I'm going to just show. Okay, I've got two different, paper things. One's a magazine, one's a journal. Just a couple quick visual things, and I mean this is exaggerated because it's little and tiny. You're probably not going to find many journals that are physically this size. They're pretty eye-catching photos on the cover. This, it gives it away. So this is Prevention Magazine. This is New England Journal of Medicine. Gives it away because journal's in the title, but also it's very dry on the cover. There's nothing really, screaming, ooh, interesting, pick me up. So in Prevention Magazine, there's an article in here about Lyme disease, and I just happened to randomly grab. So Lyme disease, I don't know that there's necessarily, the type is too small without my glasses. There could be. Let's pretend that there's also an article in the New England Journal of Medicine about Lyme disease. What it boils down to, really at the core, there are sort of three areas that make them different: the author, the editors, and the audience. So who do you think wrote the article about Lyme disease in this issue of the magazine?
Dr. Phil?
Dr. Phil.
A journalist,
A journalist. Any other guesses?
regular old Joe.
Yeah, just a writer, somebody who's very good at writing, a staff writer who this issue is writing about Lyme disease. Next issue is probably writing based on the kind of stuff they cover, like belly fat. The following issue, seasonal affective disorder. So things related to health, but they're not a health expert. Lyme disease in this, who is writing about that?
Doctors and experts.
Yeah, doctors, experts, people that have worked in labs, maybe pharmacists, pharmacologists, people with years of experience studying that specific topic. This is essentially maybe a step above what you guys are doing, and I would even question that at times, but the writer for a magazine is essentially doing what you're going to do with your paper for your course versus this person who's got years of experience. So that's the difference in the writers. In terms of editors, who do you think is editing the article about Lyme disease in the magazine? You think it's somebody that's got years of experience with Lyme disease?
No, the editorial stuff.
Yeah, the editorial staff. They're really looking more at the format than necessarily the content. They're, does your headline grab attention? Do you have a good conclusion? Do your paragraphs flow? Again, the kinds of things that you'll be looking at in your paper to make sure it's readable. Who is going to edit for a journal?
Scientist.
Scientists, years of experience, did I hear? I thought I heard some other term.
Peers.
Peers. So here's the deal with journals. There's sort of a continuum of rigidity or expertise, I would say. So a magazine, general editor. Yep, it reads well, it looks good. A journal, though, is edited by other people that have got years of experience in the field. They're making sure that things are done according to how things are done in that discipline. Even more rigid than just a journal is a peer-reviewed journal. And that means it's not going to go to just one editor. A group of professionals in that discipline, in that industry, in that field, will really closely scrutinize how the research was done, how the article was written, and what conclusions were drawn before they agree to publish it. And they do that because they don't want faulty logic, faulty testing to get published and then lots of other people to refer back to this and them to have egg on their face. So it's extremely stringent and rigid. And then the last piece is the intended audience. Who could pick up the article about Lyme disease and understand it from the
Housewife.
magazine? Said
Housewife.
housewife,
Everyone?
everyone, middle school student, high school student, me who has no medical background. If there's an article about Lyme disease in the journal, who's this geared toward? Who's the audience for this?
Other professionals.
Other professionals, scientific community, scholars, people trying to learn about it. So it's written at a different level. They already assume that you've got some basic knowledge. They don't start by really defining your topic like the magazine does. So that's sort of the main difference. The writers, who writes it, who edits it, and who the intended audience is. And I happen to grab just one quick thing that I want to clarify. I happen to grab a medical one just because it's a quick and easy thing for us to grab because we have things that will line up. But a lot of times I find students walk away with the impression that it's only medicine or science fields that have journals. Every discipline, every area have got journals in them. So there are automotive technology journals, and those of you that have been in an FYE class, you've heard me use this as an example, that, you know, I could pick up Consumer Reports, which is a magazine, it's geared toward the general public, and it could have an article about some car part. Somebody in the last class that I taught this example, you know, said carburetors, and I said, okay, that's great, because I don't know what carburetors do. So Consumer Reports is going to explain, well, what does a carburetor do, and why is it important to know about it, and blah, 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 and you're going to understand it if you have no knowledge about cars. The journal, Automotive Technician, is written for people that have years of experience in that field, written by people with years of experience in that field. So if they're writing about carburetors, they're not going to explain what a carburetor does and where is it in your car and why it's important, because they're talking to people in that industry who already know that, or they assume they know that. So knowing that information, why do you think your instructors here ask that you use scholarly articles in your research? Why don't they want you using magazine articles?
Because it may not be true.
That could be, may not be true.
Misleading information.
Could be misleading information. How about what? Let's focus on why do they want you using the journal article? Why do they say find 5 scholarly articles on your topic? Facts. And it's written by an expert. It's somebody that has devoted their life or a significant portion of their life to that topic. So they don't want you reading something that's the equivalent of some other paper that was written in a class here at the college. They want you delving into the topic as written by an expert on the topic. So you will find, if you haven't already, you will find that your instructors say use scholarly sources. So just to quickly get to what you had asked about the scholarly, in particular for journals, when you are in EBSCO or ProQuest, so if I can get my screen to come back on, I'm in ProQuest, and right from the very beginning, right at the main search box, if I want, I can say, show me scholarly articles, or I can say, show me peer-reviewed. And since we've gone through this exercise, you guys now know what the difference is that scholarly is only edited in general by one editor, where peer-reviewed is even more stringent, and it's got a group of experts that scrutinize the research before it's published. So it's sort of, like I said, on the continuum, peer-reviewed is really the pinnacle at the top. So you can, if you'd like to, put a check mark in this box right from the beginning, or you can run your search, and then in EBSCO and ProQuest, you can filter out once you've got all of your results and say, just show me the journal articles. This is helpful because if you're just starting your research and you don't know a lot about your topic, to jump right in and read the journal articles can be a little bit daunting. But if you instead are reading things like Credo reference for encyclopedia information and definitions, and then maybe read some newspaper articles or read some magazine articles, and then jump to the scholarly, as you're reading the scholarly, you will have more of the language. You know, what does that topic about? And it will make more sense to you. So I can just click here on scholarly journals and get rid of all the magazines and newspapers. And EBSCO has the same kind of filtering feature. Okay? Is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I feel like what I had was
Okay.
stuff that you covered for sure.
How are we doing now? Woo, 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
So,
process steps. I feel like we've done
primary,
everything.
secondary sources. We're going to talk about primary and secondary sources, and I guess what I would say is, again, it's going to differ. So how many of you are in an English class? Okay, and how many of you are in a history class? Okay, so it really is going to depend on what discipline you're writing a paper on. So, for instance, there could be journal articles that are the first time that they are publishing results of a study. And if you're in the science field, that could be a primary source. For other disciplines, using a journal article that talks about a study would be viewed as a secondary source because they want you to actually have the results of the study. So it really is going to depend on what discipline you're in. And you will sometimes have instructors that will say to you, I need you to go out and find primary sources. So for an English class, it could be that you're going to do an interview, or that you've got a map, or you've got a recipe, or you've got a recording, or you're watching a film. And so again, it really is going to depend. I hate to use that as an answer, but you know, if you were given an assignment and you're told to use primary or secondary sources and you're at all confused about that, stop in and either see us in the library, or Gina can help you up in the Writing Center to really answer specifically based on your assignment.
Right.
Okay?
So they are all different. How many people are in here writing an APA paper?
Few of
Okay,
you.
just a couple. Or
How about MLA papers? And any Chicago style?
okay.
Are any of you doing multiples? Like you're in a class where you have to do an MLA and an APA, or? Oh, you guys are all lucky to get to focus on one. I've had students
now,
that have had multiple, so. Evaluating sources, should we talk about that?
Sure.
So I'm just gonna hand this out. I don't know if you wanna talk about evaluating sources. So this is one of the handouts that we've got here. And really they're just, it's talking specifically about websites. I'll give you a copy. But they're sort of the broad questions to ask yourself, and again, specifically for websites. But these are helpful as well if you've got a magazine article or a journal article, or you've got a book. You know, again, depending on what your topic is and what you're researching, there are books that are out there and articles that are out there that are going to be very slanted and biased. They're trying to sway your opinion. We get mailed here at the library, we get mailed lots of books by people that, you know, want to have their story or their issue represented on our shelves. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we put them out there. So these are some questions to be thinking about. As I said, in particular with websites. And my hunch is that a lot of you are doing this intuitively, that you're kind of thinking, you know, who wrote this? You know, do they have expertise in the field? How old is this information? Are they trying to sway my opinion? Are they trying to get me angry about this topic? Do they list, you know, where did they get their information from? Is there a good depth of coverage, or is it a real surface coverage? So, and again, you know, primarily for websites, this is something to keep in mind, but you can apply these questions to any resource. And what I usually tell students is, if you can't answer these questions, if you are writing a paper and you've got a website and you think, Eureka, this is perfect, it's exactly what I need for my paper, but you can't figure out who wrote it. You can't figure out when they posted it. You don't know who has published it and what their bias might be. You know, if I were writing a paper about gun control and I'm on the NRA site, then that's going to have information presented in a particular way. That might be helpful for where I'm going with my paper, but it's just something to keep in mind. So as college students, it really is up to you to use your critical thinking skills to take a look at, and again, not just the websites, but also books and journal articles, and you know, even things like news programs and you know, all of that. It's up to you to be thinking, you know, what's the agenda here? Who's putting this information out? What's their expertise?
Exactly what I was going to say, the agenda.
Yeah. But I really appreciate your attention and thank you for coming
Yeah,
today.
thank you very much.